Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, last night, the Committee on Rules met and granted by a recorded vote of 8-4 a rule providing for consideration of 3 measures. First, the rule makes an order a motion offered by the chairman of the Committee on Appropriations that the House concur in the Senate amendments to H.R. 7148, the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2026. The rule provides 1 hour of debate on the motion equally divided and controlled by the chairman and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations or their respective designees. The rule further provides for consideration of H.J. Res. 142 under a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate equally divided and controlled by the chairman and ranking minority member of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform or their respective designees. And finally, the rule provides for consideration of H.R. 4090, the Critical Mineral Dominance Act, under a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate equally divided and controlled by the chairman and ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources or the respective designees and provides 1 motion to recommit. This rule advances a motion to concur in the Senate amendments to H.R. 7148, the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2026. Specifically, the Senate amendments to H.R. 7148 strike the Homeland Security Appropriations Division, replacing it with a CR through February 13, 2026, and make other conforming changes to the text of the bill. Mr. Speaker, by concurring to the Senate amendments to H.R. 7148, the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2026, we will end the Democrats' second government shutdown and fully fund the following departments and agencies for the remainder of fiscal year 2026. President Trump's Department of Defense, President Trump's Department of Labor, President Trump's Department of Health and Human Services, President Trump's Department of Education, President Trump's Department of Transportation, President Trump's Department of Housing and Urban Development, President Trump's Department of State, President Trump's Department of the Treasury, and many agencies related to each of these departments. Simply put, a yes vote on House Resolution 1032 enables us to consider legislation that pays our soldiers in the United States Army, providing $54.5 billion in military personnel funding to support active duty soldiers, 172,000 reservists, and 328,000 National Guard members. A yes vote enables us to consider legislation that pays our sailors and the United States Navy, delivering $40.5 billion to support 344,600 active duty sailors and 57,500 reservists who keep our sea lanes open and our country secure. A yes vote enables us to consider legislation that pays our Marines and the United States Marine Corps, investing nearly $17 billion to support 172,300 active duty Marines and 33,600 reservists, sustaining the readiness of our most forward deployed force. A yes vote enables us to consider legislation that pays our airmen and the United States Air Force, providing $38.7 billion to support 321,500 active duty airmen, 67,500 reservists, and 160,300 guardsmen defending our skies. A yes vote enables us to consider legislation that pays our guardians and the United States Space Force, investing $1.49 billion to support 10,400 active duty guardians, a growing force critical to modern national security. And a yes vote enables us to consider legislation that gives the brave men and women who are defending our country a well-deserved pay raise of 3.8% to ensure their compensation reflects the value of their service and sacrifice. A yes vote on House Resolution 1032 enables us to consider legislation that funds the Department of Labor's Veterans Employment and Training Services, otherwise known as VETS, a program that serves America's veterans and separating service members by preparing them for meaningful careers, providing employment resources and expertise, and protecting their employment rights. A yes vote on House Resolution 1032 enables us to consider legislation that funds the Department of the Treasury's Office of Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, a critical component of our national security that disrupts and disables terrorists, criminals, and other direct threats to American citizens and protects our country's financial systems from abuse by illicit actors. A yes vote on House Resolution 1032 also enables us to consider legislation that funds the Department of Transportation's Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, and our country's air traffic controllers who keep our skies safe. Given my district's proximity to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, I proudly represent more air traffic controllers than any other member of Congress. During the Democrats' previous shutdown, our Democrat colleagues used our air traffic controllers and their families as political pawns, forcing them to go without pay for 43 days. Mr. Speaker, I hope the Democrats do not subject our country to yet another prolonged government shutdown, but only time will tell as we will vote on House Resolution 1032 within the hour. Mr. Speaker, the rule before us also provides consideration for H.J. Res. 142, a joint resolution disapproving the action of the District of Columbia Council in approving the D.C. Income and Franchise Tax Conformity and Revision Temporary Amendment Act of 2025. On December 20th, 2025, the District of Columbia Council enacted, without the mayor's support, legislation to decouple areas from the federal tax code and deny district residents and businesses the local tax conforming impacts of several tax benefit provisions of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Simply put, the District of Columbia Council doesn't want its citizens to benefit from the largest working families tax cut in American history. Specifically, the District of Columbia Council wants to deny its citizens the ability to enjoy the increased standard deduction. The District of Columbia Council wants to deny its citizens the ability to enjoy no taxes on tips. The District of Columbia Council apparently wants to deny its citizens the ability to enjoy no tax on overtime. The District of Columbia Council apparently wants to deny its citizens the ability to enjoy the no tax on auto loans. And finally, the District of Columbia Council wants to deny its citizens the ability to enjoy additional charitable deductions during tax season. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd ask my Democrat colleagues why the District of Columbia Council took these actions, but I think we already know the answer. It's politics, because this happened before, following the various tax cut packages during President Bush's administration. This happened yet again after Congress passed the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017. When a Republican president enacts tax cut legislation, the District of Columbia Council swiftly seems to act to deny its citizens its benefits. I applaud my colleague, Representative Brandon Gill, for introducing this legislation. Representative Gill is a rising star in our conference, our freshman class president, and a very good friend. Mr. Speaker, the rule further provides for consideration of H.R. 4090, the Critical Mineral Dominance Act, legislation that codifies certain provisions of 3 executive orders by President Trump relating to domestic mining and hard rock mineral resources. During our last election, voters across our country overwhelmingly voted to unleash America's energy potential, and this legislation fulfills that mandate. This legislation requires the Department of the Interior to annually report on the dollar value of the overall economic impact of each mineral commodity for which our country is import reliant. This legislation requires the Department of Interior, in consultation with the Department of Agriculture, to identify priority mining projects on federal lands that can be immediately approved and to be expedited for completion. This legislation directs the Secretaries of the Interior and Agriculture to identify all federal lands in their broad jurisdictions that may be suitable for hard rock mineral exploration, development, and production. Finally, this legislation targets legal and regulatory bottlenecks that impede domestic mining by directing the Department of the Interior to revise or repeal rules and regulations that hinder mining projects. Rolling back regulations is what Americans want, and is precisely what this legislation delivers. I commend my colleague, Representative Pete Stauber, for introducing this legislation. Representative Stauber is a natural leader of the Committee on Natural Resources who continues to swiftly deliver for his constituents and all Americans. Mr. Speaker, passage of this rule enables our House of Representatives to debate and consider legislation that ends Democrats' second federal government shutdown, unleashes America's energy potential, and lowers taxes for working families, seniors, and small businesses within our nation's capital. I urge all of my colleagues to vote yes on House Resolution 1032, as it allows for our House of Representatives to govern just as the American people deserve. Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman